You have a new book coming out. The book is entitled The Madness of Crowds, Gender, Race, and Identity. And although you do not, I don't recall reading anything in the book that suggests you were thinking of it or you want readers to think of it as the second in a kind of bookend. One does in many ways follow on the other, in my judgment. Quote, "We are going through a great derangement. People are behaving in ways that are increasingly irrational, feverish, herd-like, and simply unpleasant." And you examine the identity politics of gays, women, racial minorities, and trans.
Yes.
And the ways in which they're all mad.
Yes.
So gays, quote, "The madness of crowds, the single factor that has most clearly helped to change public opinion about homosexuality in the West has been the decision that homosexuality is in fact a hardware rather than a software issue," close quote. That's extremely striking when one's reading the book. Right. Explain that.
I think that this particular thing goes through each of them. Like everyone, I've been trying to work out why people have become so unhinged in recent years. It's not just social media. I go into some of that in the book. But I think it goes something like this. We've tried to make the fruits of a liberal ethical system into the foundations of one.
Okay, yes,
so,
yes.
For instance, gay rights, of which I'm gay myself, I'm a supporter of gay rights, I think it's all good, but it's a great product of liberal rights. It's a hideous foundation for them. Same thing with, for instance, women's rights. Great supporter of women's rights. Very glad glad we're here rather than 100 years ago. But can it be the basis of a moral system or an ethical system? One of the reasons why I think we've been becoming deranged on this is precisely as you mentioned, this hardware-software thing. The problem is something like this. One of the few things we can all agree on is that we shouldn't be mean to people because of something they can't help.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why we dislike it when, for instance, somebody's rude about somebody who's disabled or taunts them about it. Right. It's a horrible thing to do. Now, things that people can possibly affect, we're iffy on. There's a question. It doesn't mean that we should be rude or unpleasant or anything else, but you're in different terrain. So most rights movements have moved towards this thing of born this way, the Lady Gaga view, as I say. Born this way
means not my fault.
Not my fault. Crucially, a counter to lifestyle choice, and I think that lifestyle choice is something worth countering on this occasion. But born this way says, nothing I can do about it, so be nice. And this has been adopted recently by the trans movement, which says, we are born trans, from childhood we're trans, so be nice. Now I explain why this has happened with trans, and it's fascinating, I think. But at the same time, we are making things that are undoubtedly hardware issues, gender, sex, into software. So things we know are fixed.
Software meaning malleable, things
malleable
that can be changed by personal will, by cultural environment, and so forth.
Right. It's why the trans issue, by the way, which is such a minority of a minority issue, has become so huge. Because it's demanding two things simultaneously. It's saying something that we're not sure about is absolutely fixed. And one of the very few things we are sure about, sex differences, for instance, is totally a choice. You could be a woman this hour if you'd like.
Right.
And that sort of thing is deranging for because it's asking us to take part in something we know to be a lie. And it is, among other things, enormously demoralizing to people to be made to lie.
And why should it be? Why should it be that there is no? It's almost as though there's no cultural immune system.
That's right.
That what would have been scoffed at, laughed at, single-digit number of decades ago, what certainly would not have been championed by the BBC.
Yeah.
Now, someone makes a claim. Douglas Murray would say, but that's not so, that you don't have any scientific evidence to suggest that at all. And the trans says, no, I was born this way, and you need to accept it. And within 20 seconds, the BBC, that's an official position. Yeah. Why? What happened? What changed? What eliminated the cultural immune system to craziness? Am I being too overbroad?
No, you're understating it.
Oh, forgive me. Go ahead.
First.
Wow, Douglas is so spot on with his answers. And before we get to his answer to the question, I just sort of want to give a few points here in terms of that hardware-software issue. And I think that is so crucial to understand because basically with the gay rights movement within the gay rights community, they basically were saying is that, look, this is something that's, as Douglas says, hardwired. We were born into it. And so if we're born into it, how can we, they haven't found that gene yet. They're still searching for it. But basically they're saying this is the way that we were hardwired. It's not something that we just, came out of the blue. It's not something that's malleable. It's not something that you're just going about and you say, oh, today I think I'm going to be gay. Oh, tomorrow I think I'll go back to being heterosexual or asexual. That's not what the gay movement is saying. They said when they've been gay, they've always been gay. Now, you go to the transgender movement, and within the transgender movement, there's even fluidity within the transgender movement in terms of hardwire or soft wiring. Some would say that, well, malleable. Today you're one gender, tomorrow you're another gender. You can be a whole multitude of genders. But then some will always say, no, it's right from birth. Right from birth. You can't just because someone has a penis doesn't mean that you is a boy or a male. Just because someone has a vagina doesn't mean it's a female or a girl. No. Why are we putting it down on the birth certificate? The doctor said that you were a male. They put it down on the birth certificate and everybody said you're a male. You have an XY? That means nothing. Gender, sex, it's all different. They don't correspond. So this hardware-software issue is something whereby right now, the software side, that's a side that's winning. Anybody comes up right now, basically, and says, that's just the way it is. You got to believe me. I say it is. Biology be damned. Science be damned. Reality be damned. Perceptions be damned. I'm saying it, so it's so. I'm saying that today I'm a girl. I'm a woman. Even though biologically I'm a boy, that means absolutely nothing. You got to throw that, push that aside. And you got to exist on what I'm telling you. And not only is it that you've got to affirm it. Forget about me affirming it. I don't really care. I'm affirming it, big deal. But you've got to affirm it. Your affirmation of me telling you what I want to affirm me to be, that's the affirmation that's needed. And until we get that affirmation, until you lie on this delusional concept, until we make it, that's what Doug was saying, nobody wants to lie. They don't want to be made to live a lie. They don't want to be made to say a lie. For most people, it's very difficult. That's what's going on. Anyways, let's get back to more of Douglas. Before that, you're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. And that's what we have on tap for you today, folks. More of Douglas Murray being interviewed about his book, The Madness of Crowds. And this is where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective on what happens when you have people, intellectual giants like Douglas Murray, and they're colliding with social media, biology, evolution, social media, entertainment, academia, religion, politics, culture, government, all that comes crashing together. Let's get to more of the debate with Douglas Murray, or the discussion with Douglas Murray and his book right now.
It's left the room. That's a big problem. It became increasingly hard, secondly, to hold concrete ideas up in public. People can sustain the most extraordinary abstract ideas. We see it every day.
So
but they're
true.
finding it extremely hard to hold on to concrete ideas because the concrete idea can have a personification right in front of you in the age of social media. So it's not, you're not talking about people in the abstract. The person is there. You're talking about this person, for instance. So it's rather like borders. People find it hard to hold on to the hard concepts. But there are a whole set of other things as well. One is, and I think this is absolutely crucial, we shouldn't underestimate the move that has been played by what was a very fringe movement in academia that is now absolutely rampant across America and Europe, which is sometimes called social justice warriorism, sometimes called intersectionalism, and so on. We didn't take this very seriously, but it should be taken seriously in my view, because it is...
Or what we call the virtue signaling elite crowd, folks. White liberal elites virtue signalers, and they dominate. They dominate in academia, mainstream media, the news outlets, the alphabet networks that we talk about, university colleges, the left-wing, so when there's that much power concentrated, they literally are controlling the narrative. And it's very difficult for conservatives and others to fight against that. It's like trying to push a noodle. You can't do it.
It is probably the single idea since the Cold War ended that has made most headway and which makes the largest claims for itself. It is an attempt, this is why, the endless thing, women, gays, race, trans, endless injection of these things into every single public discussion, every political discussion.
Yes.
We had a defense secretary in Britain who had to resign a couple of summers ago because 15 years earlier he'd been found to have touched a woman's knee, and she asked if he would take his hand off her knee, and he said yes, of course, and he did. But 15 years later, he has to resign. The woman wasn't bothered at all. The journalist said, told him I'd smack him in the face if he ever did that again. And but this stuff is.
So Douglas, what?
The point is, it's everywhere.
Yes.
And the other thing, sorry, is that it's even in. People have been saying to me for years, oh, but it's just, it's a bit of academia and you over-focus on that. It's just, some West Coast liberal, loopiness. No.
Yes.
Almost every multinational, every corporate, every government,
that's right.
They are all committed to this now. The commitment to being diverse, being absolutely woke, as we call it, on all of these issues. And
it's that thing, DEI, which I call DIE, diversity, equity, inclusion. It shouldn't be DEI. DEI should go to DIE. DEI should go to die. That's right, DIE, diversity, inclusion. It should be diversity, inequality. But that's what Douglas is talking about. That's what all the corporations are doing. Look and what's happened. There's a saying, and slowly, the tide is turning, because most of the time, when these companies or these people decide to go woke, they end up going broke or very close to it. And good riddance to those people, folks. Good riddance to them. And any corporation decides to do that. If they go woke and they go broke, that's one less culprit that we have to live up to, to live with, basically.
And the problem about it is, I think it's going to undo all the good that was done. And there are some very clear examples of that.
By building resentment.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, take the obvious one, which I mentioned in the race chapter. It's taken, 50 years to move from Martin Luther King's central moral insight about the nature of somebody's character being the way you judge them, not some characteristic like skin color
does not matter.
Right.
Character is all. That's
Exactly.
Martin Luther King Jr.
Well, today not so. There was a lecture given the other week at Boston University from an academic who is at George Washington University, I think. Yeah, no, Washington State University. She gave a lecture in which she said people who judge people by the content of their character rather than their skin color are dangerous. Skin color is meant to be everything.
Euphemism dangerous. What that professor meant is people who judge people by their character and not by their skin color, racist, bigots, bigots. That's the claim by this professor. And I can almost guarantee two things. It's either a white liberal elitist living on the West Coast or a black activist saying this.
And my God, we are hurtling there.
It's a total inversion.
Total inversion.
All right, question. I'm about a generation older than you are, as best I can work it out. As I was coming up, the general feeling among sensible people, the general feeling was, young people go to university for 4 years, and yes, of course the universities are dominated by the liberals. But the kids are smart enough to figure that out, and the moment they leave university, they get jobs, they start paying taxes, they go through what people have gone through for the struggles of forming families.
Not today's children.
They become quite sensible.
No.
And you're saying, maybe yes at one point, maybe not, but for sure, now, the universities are actually acting as transmission belts for lunatic ideas across the rest of the culture, from universities to major corporations to the media.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I mean,
and how did that happen? Again, universities really did used to be sort of the crazy uncle. You'd send your children there because they could avoid the nonsense, and you humored them.
Right.
Now they're dangerous.
Well, it goes back to saying I think there's an extraordinary lack of courage in our cultures at the moment. The simple courage to say what's true. And this has an extraordinary effect because, of course, it means that if you're weighing up whether or not you should go with a mob mentality, a crowd mentality or something or not, if there's basically no benefit to telling the truth, but there could be a huge personal cost to it, you just weigh it up. I mean, is it worth doing or not? Is it, if you saw what happened to Brett Weinstein at Evergreen College, who refused to take part in a racist endeavor that the college wanted everyone to take part in, which was to make all white people leave campus for the day.
Idiots.
If you saw that he and his family ended up being drummed
idiots.
out, not just of the university, but of town, and you were another academic who thought, I'm not sure I want to go in with this new era of race baiting that's disguised as anti-racism, and you saw what happened to Brett Weinstein, would you do what he did or not? Almost certainly not. And this isn't just because most academics are cowards, it's just that most people are. Most people aren't in a position in their lives, in their jobs, in their mortgage or anything else.
Or children to raise,
so that's
can't take risks.
Right, and that's why I mentioned somewhere in The Madness of Crowds that I discovered when I was writing it from a friend in the British Army that there's a British Army device called the Great Viper, which the American military also has, but it's a device you pull on the back of a truck to a minefield, and you fire this missile, and it's got a long rope at the back filled with explosives, and it falls across the minefield very beautifully and then explodes. And it can't clear the minefield as a whole, but it can clear enough room for trucks to cross. And I said that the point of me writing The Madness of Crowds was to be this great viper. I want to try to clear a path for other people to be allowed to cross. Now, of course, the problem is I don't know, my agent points out, we don't know if you survive that or not. The analogy may be unwise, but I think that's what people need to do at the moment. We need to open up a path for sensible people to be able to say things about sex, the relations between the sexes and much more that we all knew until yesterday.
Yes. All right. From the madness.
And so for that, where Douglas basically saying that he wants to clear the path, for us. And that's, that we are so grateful for that, for people like Douglas Murray, for Eric and Brett Weinstein. We don't have to agree with everything that they say. I don't agree with everything that Douglas says there's people out there. There's the, Daily Wire, The Louder with Crowder, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, Joe Rogan. You talk about it. I mean, these are the people that are out there, putting Candace Owens, all these, TPUSA, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. They're the ones that are putting their voice out there, conservative voices out there. And now we are being heard. They're the ones that are basically being the vipers, opening up the path for us. All we're basically doing is basically following and trying to, be our own, I guess, small little vipers. That's what this channel tries. That's what I try to do. Basically just for myself and for my kids so they can take a look back and say, you know what? Dad always talked about things, but did he do anything about it? So this is my little contribution to whatever. And it's cathartic. And it's a way to get our information out there to people in this social media age, so that we can clear a path, not only for ourselves, but for others. Somebody might be out there and want to know, wow, how do I talk to my liberal friends, my liberal family or whatever? maybe one of these videos or a video out there sort of, ignites somebody and says, oh, I think that's going to make some sense. There might be some common ground. And let's at least discuss it nicely. That's what this is all about. And what Douglas is saying is that most people, he said, I think cowards is probably too strong a word. It's the fear. I think they're fearful. I think that would be a better word. They're fearful. Is it worth the squeeze, as I say? Is it worth the squeeze? How much juice are you going to get out of it? Now, if somebody's well set financially, they don't have to worry about kids. They have to worry about, their dog or their cat or their mortgage. They've got enough money set around. They get canceled, but they can still survive. They can still go through. They've got a medium in which to, basically, talk about the situation, and they can voice it out there. Not too many people have that situation in their lives. They're just trying to go through no matter what. College professor, you're not tenured yet. As he said with Eric, are you going to do something similar? You're going to go, wow, do I want to go through that? Now, yeah, he got a $500,000 settlement at the end. But still, the amount of stress, the amount of stuff that they had to go through, leave town, start someplace new. I mean, people are going to think, do I want to uproot my family? Well, I'm just going to. And that's it. It's fine. Nobody needs to know where I stand. I'm okay with that. And if that's a decision that someone wants to make, so be it. Somebody wants to be, a trailblazer. They want to, crash through that wall and, get everything put onto them. Get the social media, be doxxed, get in a Twitter war, take the slings and arrows, be on media, be the front and center story for a little bit for that whole crap storm that's about to hit. If somebody wants to weather that storm, hey, that's up to them as well. Everybody, each individual has got to make that decision for themselves. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If we've earned your subscription, we'd love for you to go ahead and hit that subscription button. Like, share, and follow us. You know what to do. My final thought is always, oh, by the way, check out our other video links here and there. And I'll leave with my final thought, which is, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.